they have most of their existence sort of put into space. They can relate to it, of names, definitions, histories, depth. It's a fractality that sort of connects their own history, their past, their consciousness, and also where they're heading with their environment. And there are emotions and wants coupled together with what's around them. That doesn't go for modern man, who doesn't have names for the plants or any features in their environment. And maybe that's helped by the rather boring way things looks today. Everything is square, the buildings are in themselves very hard to see as other than repetitions. This is still our space, and it's part of our existence. And by shutting that out as something meaner, something that just builds our existence, we do a great injustice to our own being. And this is of course the forgetfulness of being itself. Ignoring what we really are, and ignoring the question of why, and just looking at what. And what in that case becomes something of a no question, because that is given beforehand by the why question. So we also left without any option. We know today that most people are dislocalized. They don't know where they are in space. How can we know that? Well, the body has an automatic reaction, or even animals have that reaction. And when we are out of localization, our body erect postural reflexes gets downput. They don't work properly because the system goes into a light fear. We need to know. Our perceptual system need to take in what's around us. We are part of reality. We are sort of thrown in reality, as Martin Heidegger would have put it. By ignoring that, the very fact of our existence, we do injustice to ourselves and our reality both at the same time. We get this perception of reality as being flattened out, two-dimensional, and our own body as being just cut out of a cardboard or something similar. And we lose our strength that way. We do no longer sit balanced, and we get a lot of bodily problems, as well as this crowded thinking space I mentioned earlier on, which is so common today. To be out of focus is a state of mind. Normal mindset of today, it's a mind that can't accept complications, can't see beauty anymore, cannot take in everything that's around you, and sort of gives you the elegance of reality. Rather, it's a bleak existence with repetition, grayness that actually comes from repetition. There are very clear suggestions from neurology that this grayness that is perceived among the population, up to 70%, is coming from the loop way of perception today. The feeling that there is no light in existence is because we are no longer sending signals to go out of our vision. We are just waiting for the little light that can come back to enter our optical nerve, and that literally causes grayness. So it's not even imaginary. The very lack of depth is also something that can be shown from the neurological perspective. People always make mistakes these days when it comes to distance. They are not very good at measuring distance. It even seemed to them like a nonsensical thing to do, not part of their lives or where they are or where they're being. Nothing could be farther from the truth. You are in this reality, in this instance. And if you don't acknowledge that, that will cause severe problems. It will not help to put hands in front of your eyes and hands in front of your ears and hands in front of your outgoing motion. I do that by shutting my mouth. By thinking reality is out there, you are already causing problems to your integrity, the integrity in your system. You are causing harm to the system. There's no happenstance that the amnesia of the Greek people is often referred to as the trauma of the Greek people, because it's a trauma both to the body and to the mind. So this sense also of a generalized reality, like all places, all locales are the same. So where I'm at now could be as well Ouagadougou in Chad, or Mauritania, or Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, or whatever place. All places are the same. And this is to be equal with the sickening idea of the world is the same. I don't know what it comes from, even suggesting such a horrible, utterly horrible thing. Something that Ian McGilchrist said was the one-way ticket to hell. Well, it is, because we built our own hells now by self-confirmation, shutting out any ingoing information, and we are living in this simulacrum. And actually, I also find this trove from the internet. The thing we are living in now is 10 times much worse than living in the matrix of the movie Matrix. So even the movies are presenting an idealized, better view of the world than the one we know from a scientific perspective we are living in. Isn't that amazing? Many people call the Matrix a nightmare vision, but is nothing compared to the nightmare vision we already live in. This construct that we have as a proxy for proper reality, which doesn't have any depth to it and not any color, and which causes fear in our body response system, that put us out of this fantastic balance that we are all entitled to sit balance, to enjoy being present, stable and secure. Instead, we choose fear, unbalance, insecurity and inability to tell the future, because this is a price we had to pay by getting rid of reality and constructing this proxy. I think one of those very deeming causes is the obliteration of the work of the hand these days. It has almost been outlawed to use your hands in the educational system. The hand is the most perfected instrument in the universe to discover space and to regulate your own balance and to learn. But today we instead encourage students to get rid of knowledge, get rid of difference and fractality of handwriting or any other doings of the hand which could connect the student, the pupil, to its own reality. Now we're crippling them and ask them to present what they should have written into a computer. And this in itself does the same sort of generalizing movement as these ready-made buildings that we surround us with. It makes it so much easier to fall into the trap of self-confirmation and to start to think the most devastating of all worlds, the most killer words of all creativity, of all ideas ever made in the universe, as Edward de Bono presented it. And that is the word of same. Once we say the word same, we stopped everything from working. The box stops here. The whole world stops with the word same. That is not only the acknowledgement that I will spend the rest of eternity in the simulacrum or the matrix, and I should get rid of the pill, which one was now, I've forgotten, the blue pill that could take me out of this self-created loop-side reality forever, and choose to remain in something that is not even different from day to day. Handwriting is the only way to get into fractality. It's also the only way to get a full perception of what someone is trying to communicate with in writing. The complexity of handwriting is just beyond belief. In a couple of strophes of handwriting, there could be much more information than in a whole book of ready-made letters processed through a computer. Sorry, I just have to have a look around here. That's the most surprising smell here. Speaking about taking in reality, I was rather amazed that somebody had the audacity to pull a reefer here in Gothenburg, but it still happened. But never mind, it's always a surprise, and of course it woken my senses to the reality that I have around me. But what will it take for modern human beings to discover their own reality? War, starvation, earthquake. This is things suggested by Heidegger that could actually make people conscious of their own existence and that they are actually alive. I don't know what it will take today, but sure as hell it will take much more than it would have 200 years ago. We are progressively getting rid with our own existence, and forcing young students not to use their hands anymore, it is like mutilating their connection to reality. And on top of that, enforcing a model that reality is something you passively receive is nothing short of torture, because 3 times more information goes out to all our perceptual organs than comes in. And if you don't do perception, you will not have perception. This is excruciatingly clear from neurology. Perception is the most active thing we can do as human beings. It's even more active than moving, because moving only have twice as many neurons going out than coming in from the movement system. When it comes to eyesight, it's 3 times as much that has to go out. And you have to learn each day to become progressively better at vision. Today, vision has gone down, since we don't train it every day, and it needs to be trained every waking second. Now we're instead pacifying it. It means that is atrophying actually our visual sight. I think the most terrifying example I heard was the other day, but 60% of young people in Swedish schools can't see good at the long distance anymore, because they are too accustomed to have things close to their eyes, and they don't go out to interact with a more complicated environment than this little screen that has maybe only a billionth the complexity that just a twig has when it comes to fractality. It's an incredible diminishment of information that is forced on pupils today. Time is another such thing. Susie Froebel is really apostle when it comes to showing us the way back to time once more. Hall of Science has until recently only showed us away from time, even to that degree to be an apostate and having a different take on time means actually to say no to time. That was the reason for the rather weird title of the book of Julian Barber, The End of Time. What he says no to is actually the simulacrum, matrix time, the construct in our own heads. And what he's showing is that there is a real time happening, something that is not self-confirmatory. And this is so odd these days, because the unreal time is so well established within society, within the educational system, within, even until recently, within neurology, which of course caused havoc within that science. Planning is something of the past. People usually pride themselves instead of being incredibly rational. Some sort of compliment they give one each others and themselves after the fact of even failed projects or failed planning. They say, "Oh, I'm very rational." What on earth would be the reason to say such a thing? It's like saying same in a special sense. Saying that you are good with things stops you from developing, and especially doing that once you're not succeeded, it makes even less sense. It tells the system everything is okay, and what is wrong is the simulacrum you're living in. Let's change that to be even more self-confirmatory, so that in the end you're bitten off both your legs and your arms, and you shut your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, and everything, and you can't perceive anything, and you're just a circle that confirms itself. I am good, I'm rational, and I made myself true. This circularity was something that De Bono tried all his career to sort of help people get out of. And this is also the circularity that Ludwig Wittgenstein, in his later book, Philosophical Investigation, but also the Brown Book and the Blue Book, tried to show people, like showing a fly out of the bottle into a real world with real interaction. And that takes a very consistent gander into how we made language circular. We made language correspond to a self-construct called the real world, and we made words to be a sort of a Beetlebox way that confirms themselves. And we try to find a connection, and this connection is usually giving the truth value T or F, it doesn't really matter. It is the relation that is important. so we sort of self-relate. And for me, this was taken to the greatest extent ever, and actually put a whole class into shock when I was studying logic, where the professor, Dag Westerståhl, told that the most magnificent proposition in logic was the one that proves itself to be true. And he called that true in itself. And that was the most fantastic. We were all incredibly horrified. And we also noticed, not for the first time, that the professor himself had no contact with the outer reality whatsoever. He didn't even know the way to go into the institution, that the door actually opened from the outside in and not the other way, even after 30 years. And if that not shockingly enough, I think the very next day it was an interview with one of the doctors in logic, and she said she had never used what she studied for at least 10 years, and she'd never thought it would be any use to it either. I think this is accepting the defeat beforehand, that we've given up so incredibly much in modern day civilization that we even say that there isn't even a chance of knowledge, and we are happy with that situation. We even praise it, very close to a prisoner praising his own prison cell and saying it, I prefer to be here than out in the living world with all these scares and fears. And isn't this what has happened? Because all of Western philosophy is, I would say, very influenced by the fear of non-existence. They all, the philosophers, the thinkers, a lot of authors like Kafka and some others, they all try to establish a center somewhere. It's like the very fear of non-existence is much worse than death itself or pain. So this existence becomes the main point. And everything in the philosophy take this as a starting point. And this is one of the reasons philosophy have gone more and more in the direction of self-confirmation, and that happened to logic, I would say, at the start of the 20th century, when we got this sad apology for logic called classical logic. It is an insult in itself, calling it classic. It's not even classic. It's a sort of logic that not only allows for explosion, but invites explosion knowingly, and thereby destroying it as an instrument for argument and use in everyday life. And this has later become the institutionalized logic. And when I met logic for the first time, I think it took me like 15 years until I came to understand that the classical logic was nothing like classical, was not classical at all. And I felt sincerely tricked by this. Even I felt a tint of deceit here. Obviously, the teachers of logic known about this fact, but they taught it like it was no other logic at all. Can you imagine the self-imposed supposed importance of these people, the utter ridiculousness. And I would say this is almost the model for academic knowledge today. It's completely new, and still it calls it classical. And it's also new in that sense that newness is nothing but new. It's not creativity. It's this self-confirming tendency that is stale, it's grey, it doesn't give you anything but complete shallowness, and you are served platitudes you can never use on a plate that is maybe sometimes with a golden edge around it and presented in a luxurious format like a soup only made from water. I would say that is nothing shorter than an insult beyond injury. It's just incredulous how people can behave in that manner, and it is incredibly immoral to do that. No wonder Wittgenstein himself thought educators to be highly immoral people who, like, against their own knowledge, pursued ideas that were self-made and their particular momentary point of view that didn't serve any purpose beyond that moment were sort of implied to the whole educational system. It's like one of these old tales, as we call saga in Swedish, where the king grew mad and starting to impose horrible bans on the people. This is also a horrible ban. It's a ban on knowledge, and it's also the tale that there is no chance of knowledge anywhere. And thank God deconstruction came, and shame on you, Jordan Peterson, from attacking Derrida and others who are actually trying to show us to a better way, where we can have science, fractality, and creativity instead of stale repetition. I think that is my call. I thank you very much, and I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Bye bye for now.